What's up, man? It's your boy Saul G, aka Money Graham, aka the King of Comics, coming at you again for another live episode of the Kamikage Show. If you haven't already, man, go ahead and subscribe to us over there on Libre TV. Got a lot of content over there. Today, just go ahead and get this out the way. This is a spoiler review. So if you have not seen the movie The Batman, make sure that you don't watch this. Go watch it, then you can come back and you can see where you agree, where you disagree. But today, I guess I'm about to ask, and it's going to be the first question because I do got a special guest. My boy Jeff Charles is back, and I'm going to bring him in today. And what I have to ask is my first question is going to be, did they have to get an ex-vampire to get the Batman right? How do you feel about that? Because, you know, vampires do turn into bats. So
that's true.
Was this a good move? Did they get it right? Did it take an ex-vampire, a sparkly vampire at that, to get the Batman right?
You know, when I first heard that they were going to cast Robert Pattinson, I was a little leery. But mind you, I've never seen the Twilight movies.
Okay.
But I'd also heard that he's been doing a lot of independent work. He's really honed his acting ability. As far as the look was concerned, I thought the look would be fine. Okay. But I was like, you know, is he going to be all cheesy? Is he going to be emo in a way that Batman should be emo? Because
Batman is emo. Goth Batman, right?
Yeah. But then also when I took into account the fact that this is going to be a younger Bruce Wayne, I was like, this might actually make sense. I mean, I had the same kind of thing with Ben Affleck as Batman, but then I was like, okay, well, if he's playing an older Batman, and I thought about the Daredevil movies, and I was like, that movie sucked, but it wasn't because of Ben Affleck. He's a good actor, so I'm like, he could probably pull off Batman. So I kind of gave Pattinson the benefit of the doubt. When I saw him perform, I was like, okay, for a younger Bruce, he nailed it. I thought he nailed it.
All right, so first thing, right? The Batman, that's what we're talking about. So before we get into this, I'm going to say it again as y'all kind of pile in here today as we do the live show. You can always catch us on the re-show. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. All right, so we getting into the Batman. I will say that did it take well, my thoughts on Robert Pattinson as Batman. I thought, well, first of all, I don't know if he was Batman because the main thing about it, he never really was like Batman. He was more of like, he was telling everybody his name was Vengeance, or some people called him the Bat, and he never really owned I am Batman. Not saying he needed to say that, not saying he needed to do it, but he basically was kind of sort of like, yeah, I am Batman. I kind of wanted a little bit more ownership of the Batman character. I will say this, and this is just my general kind of first impressions of the movie. I thought the first of all, the setup of the movie was done extremely well. This is the most Gotham version of Batman that we have ever got. And I feel like there was a really, really good setup because they actually gave us Gotham City. You saw the upside, you know, you saw like the good side, right? You saw the bad side, you saw the slums, you kind of saw where the upper people were, you kind of understood the inner workings of the you know, kind of how the city was ran. I thought they did the best job of doing it, and they didn't do it in a cartoony way. So that would be like my first thoughts on it. I felt the tone was finally correct. Your first thoughts on his entrance? The first time you saw Batman on screen, what went through your mind?
You know what, that first fight scene, and that was also in the trailer too, but when you see the whole thing, that first scene let me know I was going to love this movie. Okay. And the reason why, and it also kind of points to one of the flaws in this movie as well, but we'll probably get to that later.
Yeah.
But again, I always take into account that he's only been Batman for 2 years. And like you said, he doesn't really identify as the Bat. It's more like, I'm a vigilante who happens to dress up as a bat because that's my motif and I want to make people afraid. But he sees himself more as vengeance. And when you see the way he fights those guys, like, he isn't just doing it just enough to get them down and to stop them. They're on the ground and he's still hitting them.
Yeah.
And he uses that little taser thing that he had, and he not a lot of gadgets, but this was a more upfront Batman. An older Batman wouldn't have come at it that way. He would have found another way to intimidate them from the shadows and then come out and done things in a stealth way. This Bruce Wayne doesn't do that much in this movie. And normally I wouldn't like that, but again, it's a younger Batman. He's not experienced yet. So I think that scene went the way that it needed to. He doesn't talk much. He just went, even when the guy was begging for mercy, he was just like, he didn't really say much, and then he left. He did what he needed to do, and then he left.
Yeah, the thing about it was, I would probably say Batman is probably one of my top three favorite superheroes, because I'm always intrigued by the character, not just because of the gadgets. I will get into it in a second, but I was always amazed at how could you have a guy with no superpowers be like basically right next to Superman? What makes him so special? You know what I mean? What makes him such a? But it's his mind. He's trained his body to the peak form of athleticism that he can obtain, martial arts, all these different things that I like. That's what always made Batman. Then we get to the gadgets later, and I know a lot of people love using the whole saying like, well, it's because it's Batman. Batman can pretty much do anything. Oh, Batman can pretty much beat anybody. Oh, well, how can he beat this person? Well, Batman would invent blah, blah. They always kind of sort of make this excuse that kind of makes him carte blanche versus people who are normally superpowers. So I've always been fascinated by the character. Plus, he's rich, which always is an interesting thing to see. But the first scene, right? I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, it's pretty loud. Those footsteps are pretty loud right now.
Yes, exactly.
I was like, I'm used to the ninja stealth artsy Batman. I'm like, okay, so we coming with, I'm coming out the darkness. Doom, step, doom, step, doom. And I'm like, okay, I'm digging it. Okay, I'm in. And I'm like, all right, cool. So we're not going once again. I had to remember that this kind of sort of pulls from some different comics, but this is like year 2, right? Like year 2 Batman, things like that. It wasn't this Batman. I had pulled this picture, but it wasn't this Batman one had to come. It wasn't. It was, but yeah, this Batman didn't have a pistol, which would have been cool. I'm waiting on the day where we actually see Batman with an actual pistol, but that's gonna be funny. But so that was one of the comics that they pulled from. I thought that he was a little loud, but I was like, okay, set the tone for me, movie. Set the tone, and if this is what he's gonna be, it's not gonna be the stealthy Batman. He's not there yet. I'm perfectly fine with that, because my biggest complaint with the Star Wars movies are the Rey was way too powerful without learning anything. You don't want to get that whole Mary Sue moniker thrown on you. So I was like, if this is year 2 of him being Batman, he shouldn't just be, swoop down, grab somebody, scoop him up, throw some, throw some smoke.
He doesn't have the finesse yet. He doesn't have the finesse.
He doesn't know how to be Batman. So that's why I said, okay, once I saw that, and later on, I was like, okay, I'm okay with him not even accepting the Batman persona yet, because like you said, he's this vengeance at this point. He's not a symbol, he's not this, he's not that. So one part of that scene I want to talk to you about, and I want you to tell me if you think anything was there about this guy. Right? Did you recognize him?
I did.
So that means that you watched this show.
Yep, that's Tim Drake.
Now, have they confirmed whether or not this is actually Tim Drake in this universe?
I don't think so, and I really hope not.
Got you, because if you didn't know, Tim Drake, or the character show, he eventually becomes another one of the Robins, because if you watch the Titans, then you got Dick Grayson, and then what's the other one? Jason Todd, and then Tim Drake.
Tim Drake, my favorite Robin, by the way.
Correct. So they had like 3 Robins on the Titans. So if you watch that, that's cool. That's on the DC side, if you didn't know that. So I kind of thought that was a cool. Now I'm thinking, why would you throw him in this movie in that way just for it not to mean anything? Because it's not like he had a role after that, right? So I'm thinking, and I didn't feel like this movie needed to do what we call like fan service, right? Like what fan service would it be paying him off, right? Now, if you would have put the Dick Grayson in there, that's more of a fan payoff to me than him. He was not as big as a character in the Titans as like a Dick Grayson or anybody else. So I thought that was something else. So let's kind of sort of fast forward, right? And we have our first scene involving the Riddler. Okay. What were your thoughts? And then I'm gonna ask you a general question, but what were your thoughts on the Riddler's character?
Loved it. See, and I'm not going to say too much yet, but this movie gave me everything that I wanted and that I've always wanted in a Batman movie for years. One of those things was a darker, grittier version of the Riddler, not the cartoony one that you saw with Jim Carrey, which was fine, not the cartoony type that you saw in the animated series. I wanted a Riddler who was dark, angry, insane, and like one that you could take seriously. This Riddler, you took him seriously.
Right.
He didn't make you laugh, not a whole lot.
No.
He was serious, and the whole electric taping when he would go all that, like even in the trailer, I was like, I'm gonna love this. And the fact that he was the perfect foil to a young Batman, especially the way they did Batman, because it forced him to be more of the detective. But I'll say that until later. But this Riddler, I loved it. Even when he was unmasked, the guy who played him, I can't really find any fault in it. I kind of wish that they would have been unmasked to maybe a little bit earlier so you could actually see the facial expressions of the actor. I think a lot of that was wasted. But even so, I think this Riddler was great. It was the perfect way to do this movie with this villain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my thing was I thought that, like, well, number one, it kind of reminded me of like the Saw, the Silence of the Lambs type of feel from I also feel like, and even I'll get to Batman in a second, they put these characters in the real world. Like if you look at him, look at what he has on. He has on like probably like some sort of sex mask. You know what I mean? His glasses on the outside. He's got some duct tape over his mouth, a patch of green. You know, of course, they got the green from the comics. But they brought the Riddler into the real world. And I thought that they also ran that line that a lot of movies have been doing lately, especially the comic book movies, right? We want to run this line where we say, is the villain as crazy, or is the villain as bad as a person as we think they are? They're not just like, how can I explain it? The Riddler was evil, correct? The Riddler was a bad guy. It was obvious. But when you see what his motivations are, it gives you a second to pause and say, I don't agree with him killing people like that the way he was doing, but
I understand.
He kind of has a point about this corruption. So if his thing is like, well, we're not going to get no justice unless we just start taking people out. Not saying it is. What up, man? Shout out to my boy Apollo watching, man. If the new Batman, yes, in my opinion, yes, it is worth watching. I would say go check it out. So even though
like right now, after this broadcast, go watch it.
Yeah, like I said, it's long, but I would say, man, it is worth watching. I thought it was worth watching. You know what I mean? It does kind of get long at times, but to me, compared to the other Batmans that we've had, I feel like this one did a pretty good job. But that was another thing I thought about this movie. It felt very real, even though we're in this comic book universe with super villains. We didn't really see no superpowers or anything in this, but that was the first thing. So after this first killing that goes on, right? You saw it in the trailer. The guy with the duct tape his face up, and he had the message on his face or whatnot. Now I'm gonna ask you the question: Did you get the clue when they said it? You remember the clue?
He lies still. That one.
Well, I think that one. Yeah, I missed that one, but I was talking about the I think it was the one that he said. What? Wait, no, never mind. I'm sorry. I was thinking about a different one. I thought I had found the Riddler clues, but no, that's something different because this was a Riddler clue, I guess, from the comics. It said, "What has wings that does not fly, arms that have no hands, and eyes that cannot see?" What has wings that does not fly, arms that have no hands, and eyes that cannot see?
Oh, that was Justice.
There you go.
I did get that one actually when he said it.
Correct.
I was actually surprised that I got it because I don't normally get riddles that well. But when he said that, I was like, yeah, he's talking about justice.
So now let's get into the second time you see Batman, right? And Batman is now on the crime scene. And I'm like, finally, like they call him the world's greatest detective for a reason.
Yes.
Actually see him detect something.
Yes.
Like, everybody loves Batman for the gadgets and the Batmobile and I'm like, I like Batman because he shows up and he's like, let me get this clue. Oh, okay. Now this didn't go the way I thought it was. There's this. He pulls out a gadget to help him detect something. Okay, let me take out this thing where I can see all the fingerprints in the room, and then I can process through the Bat computer. I love the detective side, and I'm like, finally. We finally get to see Batman as a detective, which we have not seen in any Batman movie yet. We have never seen him be a detective. So when they brought him in, and even the reaction of the police, I was like, okay, I think I'm gonna like this movie at this point.
Yes.
I thought, once again, but the other part was he felt awkward to me in that first scene. He felt a little off to me at first. I was like, but then when I saw how they were reacting to him, I said, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna allow a little leeway because he is a human being. So everybody's looking at him, and he's probably like, I hope they don't try to do something to me, as we saw a little bit later. But your first time seeing Batman as a detective, what did you think?
I reacted that exact same way. I mean, and because it did feel awkward, and I think it was supposed to feel awkward because realistically, Batman felt awkward in that situation. The police don't know what to make of him. They feel awkward. Jim Gordon, even though he trusts him at this point, at least to a certain extent, he's awkward. Everybody in that room was like awkward. And and that's exactly how it should be. I was surprised that we had gotten to a point to where he was actually working hand in hand with the police, because usually that took a while and we don't really see that. We see him working with Jim Gordon, but not with the rest of the GCPD.
Correct.
So that whole scene, just the dynamic was on point. And when I say that this gave me everything that I wanted in a Batman movie, that was a second thing. When he actually started looking at the crime scene, trying to do stuff. Yes, you're right. This is the Dark Detective. There's a reason they call him that.
Yeah.
Ra's al Ghul does not call him Bruce. He does not call him Batman. He doesn't call him the Dark Knight. He always calls him Detective. Yep. He is a detective, and no other Batman movie has brought that out. The Dark Knight did a little bit, if you remember, like when he had to analyze the bullet that was fired from the rifle. But I mean, really, that Christian Bale's Batman always kind of knew what was going on. There was no real mystery to solve. This was like a film noir, like a Philip Marlowe movie, but with a bat suit. And and I loved that. That made the whole movie for me. They could have done all kinds of things wrong, and I still would have loved it just because of that. And the fact that he even solves that riddle, he lies still, and even some of the others, it just shows his intellect. Like, this is not a Batman that relies just on his fists and on his gadgets. He relies on his intellect. And what I love about it is that even though it's a younger Batman, he's still brilliant, but he's inexperienced, so he does make mistakes. And we'll talk about that later. He doesn't get everything right, but he gets a lot right. And him working, the dynamic between him and Jim Gordon, who I thought was very well played by Jeffrey Wright. And I love this iteration of Jim Gordon because he's a lot more involved. He's not commissioner yet, so he's actually on the streets.
Lieutenant Gordon.
Yeah, so they're both trying. It's almost like you see movies with two detectives. One, they're partners and they're solving a crime, except one of the partners just happens to be a masked vigilante.
Yeah,
it was perfect, this was just the first crime scene that he analyzed. There's a lot more of this in the movie where you're trying to kind of figure it out along with him. And that's why the 3 hours, it didn't feel like 3 hours to me. Like, it was fun because I was engaged at every moment. Every moment you're peeling off another layer of the onion, and you're going deeper. Batman's going deeper. It was just so well played. So yeah, after that scene, I was like, yeah, I'm sold. I'm done. I love this movie.
Got you. So let's get to another aspect of it. What did you think of his uniform? What did you think of the bat suit? Did it work for you?
It did, okay. Except for the unrealistic parts where he gets shot all the time. Then I'll get to that later. But other than that, it makes sense. Year 2, he's gonna be looking a little ghetto. Like those boots he was wearing, it was ridiculous. Even the Batmobile, it was more like the Bat Hoopty, but it did what it did what it needed to do.
Right.
So the suit was very functional, but not very stylistic.
Shout out to Cannon Hotep in the building, man. Checking it. He said, salute. He said, I agree. It didn't feel like 3 hours. Yeah. Now the other part that I would want to talk about would be like, okay, so you had all these other things going on in the movie, right? So we've already talked about him being on that first crime scene. We've already talked about the Riddler. We've already talked about multiple aspects. So I want to ask you a simple question. What were your thoughts? And to be honest with you, and I thought they did such a good job, I didn't even recognize. I'm gonna probably have to pull this up, man. But I'm gonna have to pull this up on the screen because I did not get a picture of him for the podcast. But what were your thoughts on Colin Farrell?
It's funny.
As the Penguin, I didn't even recognize him.
It's funny when before it came out, I remember reading that Colin Farrell was going to play the Penguin, and I was like, how's that
How?
gonna work? I mean, that dude, like that, they're gonna have to, he's gonna have to gain weight or whatever.
Yeah.
And then by the time I saw the movie, I had forgotten that Colin Farrell was playing the Penguin, and so I see him come out, and I'm just like, okay, this is just a different version of the Penguin, and I like him. I like this version of the Penguin.
Right, but like I promise you, until like after the movie, I knew he was in the movie, right? But I wasn't necessarily like, because I get sometimes I want to actually go into a movie without trying to watch all the breakdowns and the things you're
Right.
supposed to see and the things. I just want to kind of. So I honestly, the whole time watching the movie, I had no idea this was Colin Farrell. So if you look at him, that's what he looked
Me
like
neither,
as
yeah.
Oswald Cobblepot.
Well, the funny thing too is that I read after, because after the movie ended, I was like, wait a minute, Colin Farrell was a Penguin in that. That was Colin Farrell? That was a Colin. But I guess what happened is he was supposed to gain weight like naturally, but then he had gone to his doctor, and his doctor was like, no, you can't be like just gaining that weight and losing it. So they had to use all those prosthetics on him. And first off, he's Irish, but
Right.
you wouldn't know it from the way he faked that accent, like very Brooklyn, gangster type of thing, almost more like Italian. And his portrayal of the Penguin, I'm sorry, Danny DeVito, but he's right up there with you. I'm not going to say he was better, but those are two way different Penguins, so it doesn't really make sense to compare them. But I really liked the way they portrayed the Penguin in this film. Usually he's short and he's fat and he's not very scary. I mean, he has the umbrella that shoots stuff and gas, but this Penguin was menacing, but still retained the character of the Penguin. Like he can be funny because he's kind of goofy, but he was also very menacing. Like you don't want to mess with him unless you are Batman. So,
they made him for, and I know you'll probably remember like the Dick Tracy's, right? Like you remember how they had like the Dick Tracy, kind of like the old. He was more or less to me like an Al Capone type figure. He was disfigured, he was scarred, but he wasn't like a joke. He wasn't like a cartoony version of the Penguin. He was like, this is the Penguin, and that's why I told you, when they start bringing in these characters into real life, it's like if the Penguin was a real person, then what would he be? He would be a guy probably that was somewhat disfigured. That would be a nickname, maybe even a nickname he didn't even like. You understand what I'm saying? And how they were kind of going through it. So I really thought they did a good job of bringing him in. Another character, which, they brought into this movie was, of course, Catwoman. And I feel like anytime you can bring this young lady into any movie, you can probably not go wrong. The love child of, who is this? The love child of Lisa Bonet and
Lenny Kravitz.
Lenny Kravitz. So anytime you can bring her in a movie set, you're probably not going to go wrong. So what were your thoughts on Catwoman?
They wouldn't be appropriate to say. No, I'm just kidding. You know what? And
I was about to say, yeah, I ain't gonna get you in no trouble, man.
No, I'm playing anyway.
Nah, you good.
Yeah. This is the first time I've ever seen Zoe Kravitz in a movie. And, I feel weird because I really don't have much negative to say about this movie because I'm going to gush over her too. She nailed it. She nailed it. And I like that she wasn't fully developed either. Like she didn't have her whip or her claws or her gadgets. She had some gadgets to break in the safe and stuff like that. So she was obviously a cat burglar. But even she nailed the personality too, because she's always very sassy. She always goes up to that line. Batman has to pull her back to make sure that she doesn't go down that road of killing people. That's all throughout the comics. But just even her interplay with Batman was just so spot on. It's almost like she just studied Catwoman, and she probably did. Just studied who Catwoman was supposed to be, and she nailed it. I mean, even when she was more Selena than Catwoman, and she was in those scenes where she was walking through the club or interacting with men, like that whole manipulative vibe that she has, like she knows how to manipulate men, and she does it to Bruce too. But I mean, it was so well done. It wasn't cheesy. It wasn't corny. She's not doing, I mean, she was doing like the normal kind of crazy stuff that superheroes do, but not over the top to where it's like, okay, come on now. She relied, again, just like Bruce, she relied more on her wits and her ability to manipulate men than she did on her fighting ability. And it was just so well done.
Another character that I'm not going to bring up on screen, but I thought they did another good job. I'll just talk about Catwoman. I thought spot on. Like they didn't. I like it when you know who it is and you paid attention. Like for example, her ski mask had like little cat ears on it, right? So once again, we bring it into the real world, right? So we're doing a good job at doing that. A shocking surprise to me was is his name hold on, let me make sure I get his name right. John Turturro as
Yeah, Don
Carmine
Shapiro.
Falcone. Normally I see this guy as like a comedian, right? Like
Yeah.
he's always doing funny things, but to see him in this role as his big crime boss, and then they kind of looped in the Catwoman, and I had to go back and start looking like, is there any version of Selena Kyle where she was his daughter? I don't know. I didn't really get into that, but I kind of like that tie-in as well. And I'm watching, and I'm like, I really like John Turturro as a as the boss, as
Yeah.
the man. And we're going to get into kind of what happened to him, but if you look at everything that kind of happens in the movie, it definitely opens the door for the Penguin now to kind of
Mhm.
sort of assume that role. And when you kind of see who else is in jail, it sets up now the Penguin can now take over as the crime boss and things like that. But
Mhm.
your thoughts on I thought even just throwing in Carmine Falcone, that kind of gangster element in this whole thing, right? Because we already knew we had the Riddler, right?
Mhm.
And that would have been fine all by itself, but also throwing that gangster underground version element of Gotham in there. And the Falcones, I feel, were a big part of like kind of like the Batman lore. So I thought that was like another like tip of the cap. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, John Turturro nailed it. I mean, he's a great actor just in general.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, he usually does play more comedic roles, but he's very good at what he does. And I also read that those glasses that he wore, John Turturro picked those out. Like he went and bought them and said, "I'm going to wear this because this I feel like this fits the character," and it
Right.
worked. And I was concerned at first because you had Riddler, Carmine Falcone, and Penguin, who are all three good villains in their own right. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
always afraid that they're going to muddy the story, but
Yeah.
it didn't. It flowed. It flowed. It made perfect sense. And I thought that the way he played Falcone as, obviously a brutal, vicious, power hungry mob boss, but
Mm-hmm.
one that kind of floats below the surface. Like, who he is, he's there, but
Mm-hmm.
he's not out there doing all the dirty work. But
Right.
then he also has this also darker side where he likes to strangle women.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, he's kind of like the kingpin type thing, like in
yes.
Marvel. The way he's portrayed a lot of times, where he's just Hawkeye did a good job of talking about the kingpin being behind the scenes. He's the
Mm-hmm.
guy pulling the strings behind the scenes, but he's like still a public figure who kind of you see him, but you don't necessarily realize that he's the one doing everything. So I thought they did a good job with that as well.
Well, and even his relationship with Thomas Wayne, and even Thomas Wayne being a little bit shady, that's not something
Mm-hmm.
that's really been brought out. I mean, that was
Right.
actually part of. I don't know if you've played the Telltale Batman series.
Mm-mm.
That's kind of more of the plot there, although it's a little bit different. I won't spoil that, but
Yeah.
just the fact that he had that connection with Thomas Wayne and how Riddler kind of saw that, and just I don't know. I thought the way they did Carmine Falcone was very well done, even with him ending up being the Rat, which I didn't
Mm-hmm.
expect. I thought it would have been the
Yeah.
Penguin,
Yeah.
but yeah.
And that was going to be something else that I was going to talk about. I think that this is another one of those no themes, and it didn't bother me. We start talking about let's talk about the political nature of things, but what we've never really thought about in any Batman movie before, we've always looked at the Waynes as being this very, very like clean cut, um,
Hmm.
family that was doing all this philanthropy, trying to help people, open up orphanages. They're giving money everywhere and doing everything with that money, right? We've never really thought of the 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 Waynes in the same way that people talk about like the Illuminati being one of these
Hmm.
very powerful families that is like talk about who runs Gotham. Like if there are 5 families that run Gotham, you've never thought about the Waynes as you kind of push them off to the side, right? Like kind
Yeah.
of it would be like if you went back and you investigated the Starks in not Game of Thrones, but in Marvel, right? Tony's dad. If
Yeah.
there was something suspicious in his past about how he made his money, how he was able to do X, Y, and Z. But we've always looked at, especially his father, as just being this brilliant doctor who just wanted to help people, and he was just trying to protect his family. Ended up getting killed for some pearls, which that whole Batman origin is always dumb to me because I'm like, you're rich. I'd be like, here, take it. You know what I mean? Like, you
Right.
rob
Right.
me, take whatever you want, just don't kill me. I'm too rich. You know what I mean? Like, where did that step up? And now somebody who I did leave off, who I will bring up on screen next. I thought that was another thing. While I'm trying to get his picture, I want to ask you what you thought about kind of sort of maybe putting a little uh kind of dimming the light of the Wayne legacy. What did you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, it made sense. I mean, because you're right. It does make sense that somebody would just shoot them. Although, I mean, people are crazy. I mean, so you never know what somebody's going to do. At the same time, if it was a hit, then it does make sense that even if he said, take my wallet, the guy still shoots him. It made sense. I mean, I thought it was resolved a little bit too easy, but it wasn't that big of a deal. But even when you're talking about the families that created Gotham, they dropped a little Easter egg. When they mentioned Edward Elliot, who would be like the father or grandfather of Thomas Elliot, who becomes Hush, and they even make allusions to Hush in the movie. It's just, and some people have speculated that they're going to bring in the Court of Owls. So if his family was involved in that, maybe in the next movie he'll find out some other stuff, some other dirt about the Waynes too. So that would be interesting to see. Like it might not have just been his father; maybe his grandfather was up to some stuff too.
Right now, for some reason, all the pictures that they have are not any good. They're all the pictures from Black Panther. But the next character that I do want to talk about was Andy Serkis as Alfred.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I liked the cast. I thought that Alfred was, kind of the good job. He's always going to be the voice of reason. I enjoyed the fact that they kind of pushed that Alfred series a little bit. Him being like an ex British I think Secret Service or special agent or whatever he was. Yep. Military guy. He had the nice little scar that he presently displayed the whole time. So I thought that was a cool thing. But the way the movie was set up, and we'll get to it in a second, I really enjoyed the movie. Had so much realism to it. I honestly thought for a second, like, oh my God, did they kill Alfred? Like that's how grounded this movie was. And we're gonna get to talk about the grounding of the movie now. So my question, first question number one, your thoughts on Alfred. Did you like the casting? How did you feel he was portrayed?
I did. This was a different Alfred from what we're used to seeing. This Alfred was more like rough around the edges, if you notice. Mm-hmm. Like he wasn't just like the prim and proper, fastidious, butler. This guy was almost like a soldier dressed up as a butler. And I like that because that's essentially what Alfred is. I mean, Alfred isn't a pushover. He can fight. He knows what he's doing. Yeah. So
he was giving me mercenary vibes. Mercenary that also makes a nice coffee. You know what I mean? That's what he was giving me.
Exactly. And also even the part where he even helps Bruce with his detective work. Because remember when they get that first cipher from the first crime scene, Bruce wakes up the next day and he's out there trying to solve it. And he's actually solving it. Mm-hmm. And so just to see them work together and even kind of like the tension between them when Bruce says, "You're not my father." And he kind of, and Alfred just kind of just takes it on the chin. It was like, well, yeah, I'm aware of that. And you can just see the dynamic between him because essentially he is his father. He raised him. Mm-hmm. And so you can just see that interplay, but also the fact that it doesn't quite fit because it should have never been that way in the first place because Thomas and Martha should still be alive. Yeah. So you can see how Alfred you can see how he's had to kind of navigate this, raising this young boy. And now he wants to be a vigilante. This is dangerous. Alfred has always wanted better for Bruce. He always wanted him to settle down, have a nice family. But since he can't have that, then he's going to help him stay alive. And then to see Alfred almost get taken out, like in the first movie, I was like, oh, he's got to live, but he might be dead.
Yeah. This was the first time where like something happens inside the movie where you're like, I know they didn't just kill Alfred. But the fact that I had that thought, I was like, all right, I got to give it up to the director. You've made this so real. I honestly thought like, I was going to take him out. Then they showed him and he's in the house. I was like, all right, cool. The second part, I thought it was interesting them speaking about how he felt guilty about his parents dying, that he was supposed to be there to protect them because that's the part that people forget. Alfred was more than a body. He was more than a butler. He was actually like the family bodyguard. Mm-hmm. He was supposed to keep everybody safe. I thought them bringing up that part was another good ad. I want to talk to you about some of the realism we saw in this movie. We'll talk about some of the good realism that I enjoyed. I enjoyed the fact that when he kind of jumped off the building with the wingsuit, didn't just come land, superhero landing on the ground. He's perfectly fine. Like, once again, Batman year 2, he's not going to be perfect at being Batman yet. I was like, thank you for not making him just overpowered. He's too
like Christian Bale.
Correct. He's too perfect with everything. I appreciate that they still made him he's still learning. He's still adapting to some things. So that was one of the realism aspects of the movie I enjoyed. Is there a realism aspect of the movie that you really enjoyed? where they kind of like what we've been talking about. The theme, what we've been talking about is they brought Batman into somewhat of the real world. Is there something else that you've seen that maybe were done in cartoony type of ways in other versions of Batman, but this one was like, okay, I could see that I mean, I could see that Batman exist around, technically like a vigilante guy could go do this now.
Yeah, I would say, and by the way, that scene is actually one of my favorite scenes. Not so much because he crashes, but his reaction when he realizes that he's like 50 million stories up and he freaks out. That reminds you, okay, oh, this really is Batman here too.
There you go.
30, 40-year-old Batman would have just jumped off that cliff like it was nothing. But yeah, that part. But also, I would even say, if we talk about the gadgets, his gadgets aren't that impressive. I mean, they're cool. They're good. Yeah. Like the taser and like when he uses that thing to create smoke. Some of the other stuff he does. Even the Batmobile itself, it's not that impressive.
Yeah, this is like the Home Depot version of Batman.
Yeah, it is.
Like you can be Batman if you go get these different things and you can kind of make it yourself.
Yeah, it feels like it. If you have enough money, you could make this stuff. I'm not recommending anybody do this. I'm just saying.
Nobody. We're not recommending any vigilantism.
You're not going to be Batman. Don't be Batman.
Don't be Batman. There you go.
But yeah, I mean, it felt so much more real. I mean, and it's not so much that the others didn't feel real. Like with Christian Bale's Batman, I like that bat tank. It's conceivable if you have enough money, you could build something like that.
Yeah.
But this Batmobile, it's like the mobile and the other stuff that he used. It just wasn't all that. It was very pragmatic. Like that doesn't look very pretty, but it gets the job done. His bat suit, it ain't pretty, but it gets the job done. It gets him from point A to point B. I mean, it makes sense. It's very. I keep forgetting the word that I want to use here, but it's more for. It's not so much for show. It's for, it's more utilitarian. That's it.
Gotcha. Okay, so now when you talked about the bat suit, so now let's just kind of break down them building it. Now, somebody said, and I forgot who said it, but somebody said that it looked like if you look at the bats on his chest, somebody said that looks like it was like he might have melted down a gun to make it.
There was speculation that it was the gun that killed his parents.
But, so then it's like, okay, so if we break this down, right, he's got on like, it looks like some sort of armor, some shoulder pads. You know what I mean? It kind of looks like like some of the gear that a skater would have, but of course they're probably like more reinforced. But if you look at his actual look, it's not something that you could look and say, this is beyond the scope of what I could be able to create. It's like hypothetically a bulletproof vest, and then you got some protective gear over your arms. That was one of the aspects. Like I say, they grounded that, but the other part, the gunshots and all that other type of stuff, that was the part that left reality for me. I was like, the Batman, his armor and stuff like that, it's supposed to be somewhat protective, but I mean, when he was getting shot, it was like ping, ping, ping. It was like he didn't necessarily even need to react to it. You know what I mean? Like,
especially when he's in that tunnel and they're like shooting him with fully automatic weapons, and he's just kind of walking through it. I'm like, no, that doesn't turn you into Superman. Like,
I was feeling more RoboCop vibes at that point. Like, okay, you're way too but that's my thing. I don't want my Batman to even be exposed to that. I want him.
He shouldn't be getting shot.
Throw a batarang, throw some smoke down, do something a little bit more smooth instead of just being like a tank and running through and getting shot up the whole time. So that was one of the things that I thought grounded the movie.
Because to me, it's like I can, you're supposed to suspend disbelief, but I couldn't suspend it that much. Like he shouldn't. Like I didn't like that he was getting shot that much. If he had gotten shot a couple times, fine. But it's the same problem that I had with the Mandalorian. Actually, he gets shot too much. I'm sorry. He just gets, like I want my heroes to have just a little bit more finesse, and I get he's inexperienced, but there's no way he can get shot that much and just keep going.
I agree. So. Anything else that you can think of that kind of grounding reality? I feel like his I don't know, it's not the batarang, but his grappling hook. I thought that's pretty much one of those, like, okay, I could kind of even see that, even though when he's kind of escaping from the police, I'm like, I don't know if this Batman gets out of that one, but I was just like, okay, even how he kind of got out of there. Anything else you could think of that you saw? You mentioned some gadgets. Anything else that you kind of saw that you were like, okay, this movie seems to be somewhat grounded in reality?
I would say the way he gets around. Okay. So if you notice, he uses that motorcycle a lot.
Yep.
And now in the animated series and in other Batman movies, he's usually like gliding and stuff like that, and that's fine because they explain how he's able to do that. But he's just grappling across the city. But in real life, a guy couldn't just grapple across the city that fast.
No.
He would need, and he couldn't just drive a car like that too, because that's going to attract attention. Like he only brings that out when he needs it for something specific.
Right.
But how else is he going to get around? He uses a motorcycle.
Right. And I also like the aspect of being somewhere where he doesn't have to go out as Bruce Wayne, and he kind of blends into. That was the blending in the shadow part that I like.
Yeah.
When he kind of pulls up and he's watching something go on, but he's not Batman, he's not Bruce
He's got
Wayne.
His motorcycle helmet on. You don't know who he
puts
is.
the helmet on, and he just kind of blends into the scenery. I ain't gonna lie, like I love the Batmobile. I'm gonna put it back on the screen.
Bad
I loved it. I love the raw. I mean, if you were in the movies, I mean, it's almost like you could feel that power that thing had, and I really thought that they really grounded the Batmobile, and instead of it being like something that I know car technology has come a long way, but this Batmobile really felt it, and they went kind of sort of like heavy muscle car.
And even the way they used it, like when you first see it power up, you're like, oh snap, it's gonna be.
It was the hype of it coming on. So real quick, and then we're gonna go ahead and kind of bring everything to a conclusion about our thoughts on the movie. If you got something else to add, just let me know. What was your favorite scene in the movie?
Ooh, favorite scene.
I'm like, I know mine.
I don't know if I can pick one. Let's see. I'm going to say, okay, this is kind of a two-part.
Okay, two-part, gotcha.
I'm going to say when he goes to see the Riddler,
okay,
realizes that the Riddler had bigger plans that he didn't figure out, and then he has to go back to the apartment and say, what did I miss? Because that to me solidified that this is Batman Year 2. 30-year-old, 40-year-old Bruce Wayne, that whole last scene would never have happened. It would never would have happened. Those bombs would not have gone off. There would have been no flooding because he would have already figured out what the Riddler was doing.
Right.
The Riddler wouldn't have gotten the upper hand saying, you didn't figure it out, dude? Oh, you don't know what I'm up to here?
Yeah.
That would have never happened because older Bruce Wayne, more experienced Bruce Wayne would have said, nope, the Riddler's up to something more. Let me go. He would have caught that on the first sweep through the apartment.
Right.
And he would have prevented the whole thing from happening. This Bruce didn't. He made a mistake. And that's what I was talking about earlier. He's brilliant. He's got the intellect, but he makes mistakes. And this was a huge mistake that essentially got people killed. Obviously, you don't blame him because he didn't do it, but he should have caught that. And he didn't.
Gotcha.
That being said, when he realized what was going on, when he realizes that, this isn't just about me being vengeance anymore, and he's rescuing those people, and this is after he beats up all those 50 guys, which I have commentary on that too, but it's not as important. But when he realizes, when the Riddler guy says, I am vengeance, and he's like, oh crap, I've been doing this wrong, then he becomes Batman after that. And when he's rescuing the people out of Gotham, when he hits that flare, and he's leading those people out, and he's still the next morning carrying people over to the stretcher. Even though Batman doesn't normally come out during the day, that's when he became something more than just vengeance. Because remember, Batman isn't about vengeance; he's about justice, making sure that what happened to him doesn't happen to other people, and if it does, he punishes the person or he submits him to the justice system. It's why he doesn't kill.
Right.
So at that moment, that's I think where he finally accepts who he is and that he's the Batman. And even the Riddler kind of sees it because this always comes up, but the Riddler doesn't know who he is. But he says, whoever you are in that mask, that's not who you really are. Who you are in front of me right now, that is who you are.
Right.
And so to me, like that was just the perfect way to end that arc of Bruce finally realizing where he messed up and where he needs to go from here.
All right, so I'm gonna play. I'm gonna do my best to attempt to play my favorite scene. I am going to ask that you do live commentary, so this will look like not like we're just stealing something from Warner Brothers or whatever. So YouTube won't be trying to give nobody no strike for this. I believe 25-second clip that we're about to play. So make sure you unmute your mic and just kind of talk to this and tell me what was going through your head as this happened. So yeah, I was watching. And I was like, okay, he's about to go over the ramp, and then I was, oh, you gotta unmute yourself. I was like,
And he thinks he's home free.
I was like, wait for it.
Yeah.
Wait for it. Wait, there it goes. Yeah. So I thought this part, even though you saw this on the trailer, so once again, this is something that you could have got from the trailer, right?
Yep.
A very cool scene.
But
even how
where Batman, where he's upside down and Batman's walking up,
I was like, you did this. This is great. You know what I mean? I really, really enjoyed that. Now that we've got to this point and we talked about that, your best scene. My question is, now we got to be, I'm not saying to be negative, but what didn't you like? What didn't work for you in this movie?
So one, like I said, him getting shot that much, especially even with a shotgun.
Yeah.
Like everybody knows, even if you're wearing body armor and you get shot, it takes the wind out of you. Like you don't just get back up. So I didn't like that. Like if he would have gotten shot just like a couple times, fine. But even though it's year 2, he should be good enough to where he's not getting shot like that. Yeah. It's one thing if he gets hit or somebody hits him with a bat, whatever, fine.
Yeah.
But that just kind of, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it's just kind of like, I can't suspend them as much as disbelief. But even in the scene that we just saw, that ramp just happened to come up right where he needed it to go. Come on, dude. Like,
yeah, I know it was a very cool scene. I enjoyed it, but I was like, so, being I drive trucks, I'm like, so you got a car hauler that happens to be down there that just happened to drop, and he's going to drive. Like, first of all, driving straight up that in motion as fast as it was going is an extremely difficult thing to do. But I was just like, you know what? I'll take it for a cool scene. I'm going to go towards the other part with the when he was fighting the I don't know what we're going to call it, the fake Riddlers.
The Riddlers.
Like I was like, yeah, I'm not in, like he was getting shot and he was still punching people and they were shooting him with high powered rifles, basically at point blank range. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, okay, I got a little action scene, but I'm like, you've already got me to the point where I feel Alfred could die. Maybe I might need to feel like Batman might be able to get shot. You understand what I'm saying? Because if you had did something like that, or if he got hit and he's like, oh, and maybe that'll be a time where he kind of goes away, and maybe I wanted a scene that didn't happen. I wanted the scene where Batman gets injured and Alfred has to come save him. Because maybe he kind of sort of, since this is year 2, he's not there yet. So there's got to be a point in time where he believes he could get out of a situation, but he can't. So that's when Alfred could have had a little bit of a bigger role, because honestly, Alfred's role in this movie was pretty minimal, to be honest with you. And I wanted that would have also made it feel more like year 2, like, okay, this Batman's not there yet. You know what I mean?
And he could have learned a lesson from it.
He could have learned a lesson, and he could have told him, hey, Bruce, you're not an army of one. You're not this. You're
not Superman. Yeah,
you're not Superman. They could have hinted around to, you're not that guy from Metropolis.
Right.
Okay, you can die. And I thought that would have been a real good conversation for them to kind of have.
Right.
So that would have been another thing. Another thing that I didn't like was I didn't like I'll put it like this: the runtime. And I'll put it like this: I didn't like the ending. That was one of because I ain't gonna lie to you, it didn't feel like 3 hours, but that final scene, I was like, okay, I'm kind of ready to go at this point.
You're ready to go, yeah.
That final scene to me was so unnecessary, and I was like, well, what are we even setting up right here? You know what I mean? And I was just like, because I felt like the movie had certain points where it could have ended, and I'd have been like, perfect. I felt like the movie had a lot of different things that padded the runtime. Like, going back to the reason why the runtime was a little longer, it was because he kept doing those slow steps instead of just poof, he's there. That might have cut out a couple of minutes or whatever. But that final scene with the motorcycles in the graveyard, that to me, they could have cut out. Like,
yeah, it wasn't necessary.
It was cheesy. It was like, okay, what's going to happen next? Because I'm going to tell you, I thought the movie was over when the Riddler and apparently some guy who loves to laugh in prison were speaking to each other, and I was like, oh, okay, that's a perfect way to end, right? And it kind of faded to black, and when you came back, it was them riding off with the motorcycles. It was like, I thought,
you didn't really need that. You're right.
Yeah, we didn't need that motorcycle part. Was there anything else that you thought was like, I could have done without that?
Yeah, I would say that scene. Honestly, I think that even even him carrying that person to the stretcher,
Mhm.
that might not have been necessary either, because you already saw him leading them out with a flare.
Correct.
They could have just cut it there and said, news report,
Mhm.
Batman helped save all these people.
There you go.
Cut out the motorcycle part,
Mhm.
and I think that would have been fine. Now,
Yeah.
to me, it didn't hurt the movie that much, but they could have
Right.
done about it.
The other aspect that I thought that I didn't like was, and I'm not gonna lie, uh, I know we had talked about this earlier. You had even mentioned emo Bruce Wayne. I did not like him as Bruce Wayne at all. Like I felt like this is the guy that, like, even his look, right? Like I get it, like,
Like a
but you got to
crypto kid.
remember Bruce Wayne has it. I know he's got to get on his Playboy stuff later on. I know he's got to become this millionaire kind of vigilante that we all like seeing, but his version of Bruce Wayne, and maybe you can give me your opinion on that. I didn't feel real Bruce Wayne. Even when he came to the funeral, I didn't feel like, I guess if you want to make him more like he's the reclusive Bruce Wayne, that fine, and it might work. But I just wasn't feeling like for example, any movie where you got an alternate identity, right? I want you to fully, and you gave me 3 hours, so I need you to fully hash out what's going on with Bruce Wayne and fully hash out what's going on with Batman. To me, I feel like the Bruce Wayne side of things wasn't necessarily as hashed out because it was 3 hours, so I felt like you have time. But,
So I agree with all of that, but I was willing to let it go because this is just the first movie.
Yep.
And I don't think that Batman has seen the usefulness of Bruce Wayne yet. Because like the Riddler said, Batman is who he really is. So in this movie, he was always Batman, even when he had the bat mask off. He hasn't really figured out who Bruce Wayne is yet. And that even comes out when Alfred's like, well, these people are coming here to meet you. He's like, why are they coming here, Alfred? Because you won't go out there and meet them. You're supposed to be keeping up your father's legacy. You're supposed to be running this damn company. You're supposed to be knowing what's going on. And this is like a mid-20s, late-20s Bruce who doesn't see the value in that yet. Christian Bale's Batman didn't go through this. And actually, this movie kind of makes me give that movie the side eye because it's Christian Bale shouldn't have been this developed already. But it was okay for what it was. It was fine. But this Bruce Wayne hasn't figured stuff out yet. And I think that's plain and simple. And that is a through line through the entire movie. This is a Batman who has not figured out who he is and how he is supposed to operate. Now, if he's the same Bruce Wayne in the second movie and it's the same way, then I'm going to have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Because somewhere along the line, even though we know that Bruce Wayne being a playboy is an act, he needs to start acting now.
He needs to start acting that way. I need to see the arrogance. I need to see the caravan of women around him. I need to see the fancy cars and stuff like that, because I don't even think, I was trying to think what he showed up to the funeral in. I don't even think it wasn't like the car was not impressive.
Yeah.
I just put it to you like that. For him to be Bruce Wayne, he might have pulled up in a car that I'm like, man, I probably could get that. Like I want Bruce Wayne supposed to pull up in something. Correct. He's supposed to pull up in something where he said, you can't get this. It was only 15 of them made, and I got 13 of them. Right. You know what I mean? Like, that's how, it needs to go. So, that being said, but to wrap everything up, I will say I thought the Batman was done very well. I appreciate it. Even though, like I said, I know some people had a problem with the runtime, but for me, as a fan of Batman, I didn't necessarily have an issue with it. The other issue might have been because we went to go see it probably about 10 o'clock at night. That might have had another thing to do with it. So maybe if I'd have went and saw it a little bit earlier, the missus was, she was kind of not falling asleep, but I know she was kind of struggling her way through it. So it is what it is. Your final thoughts on the Batman, and what would you like to, who do you want the villain to be in the Batman Part 2?
Ooh, that's a good question. Overall, I loved it. I mean, I gave it an A. I mean, the problems that I had with it were little. I mean, they're little problems, and they nailed it. Like I said, they gave me everything that I wanted in this movie, and I was shocked that they did. I was surprised. In the next movie, the temptation is always to say the Joker. I don't want to see the Joker yet. I would rather for them to wait. Who would I like to see? I don't know. I mean, maybe Two-Face, because I don't think that they did him really well in the Chris Nolan trilogy. It was fine the way they did it, but I want to see Two-Face or I want to see Two-Face done right, or somebody like Scarecrow done right. And Scarecrow was done right in the other movies too, but I just want to see more of who we already know those characters are. I want to see Harvey Dent struggle with his duality and struggle with his mental illness. I want to see a Scarecrow who is nuts. Either of those would be fine, or even if they wanted to bring in Hush. Some people have also speculated, like I said, the Court of Owls. I don't know if I'd want to see the Court of Owls. I want another Rogue Gallery villain. Yeah. I don't want Bane. I don't want I don't want him to go crazy like with Killer Croc and Clayface, all that, Poison Ivy, and I don't want any of that. Maybe, I don't want Mr. Freeze either, but if they did it, I probably wouldn't be mad. But I'd like to see a Two-Face. I'd like to see Penguin come into his own a little bit more, because he's always going to be there, and maybe Scarecrow.
Okay. Well, like I said, that has been our Batman review. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Like I said, it was definitely we spoiled some things, but we didn't just go into every single detail of the movie. So even if you did watch it, it's still worth the watch. Anything you got going on that you want to let the people know about, and then we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up.
Yeah, still got my podcast, A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. Also my YouTube channel. Check it out. I'm doing a lot of interviews, and I'll be doing my audio only as well. So yeah, check me out and follow me on Twitter at Jeff on the Right.
All right. Well, once again, man, I appreciate you coming in talking to me about Batman. I guess I don't know what's up next in the comic book world. We already talked about Obi-Wan Kenobi on the last podcast. Morbius is coming. Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness is coming. Just a quick thing before I let you go. Did you see the Miss Marvel trailer?
No, I didn't. I need to watch that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I don't think I'm gonna enjoy Miss Marvel at all, because
really,
a lot of the things that we talking about, they've started throwing into these movies nowadays. They're gonna really focus on her religious background and things like that, which are unnecessary to me, because we never saw Captain America go to church, so why would we need to see her at a mosque? But it is what it is. Unless the mosque is being attacked and she's trying to save it, that's different. But if it's just to show Muslim, Islamic culture or whatever,
Muslims are good. Okay,
it's like, come on, man. Like, we don't just. The way I look at it is like, okay, we've already established that Eternals are real. There are these things called, if you watch the Eternals movie, they pretty much do the whole biblical God theory out the water anyway.
Oh, really?
So the fact
that
you didn't miss anything. So we're anti-Eternals on this. But the bottom line is they talked about how everything came to creation. It was created by the not the Eternals. I forget the name of the beings beyond the Eternals. That if you watched Guardians of the Galaxy 2, Celestials. They were created by the Celestials, right? So in the movie, they basically got rid of the whole, God theory, Adam, Eve, all that stuff. So the fact that they're already saying that we know beings like Celestials exist, we know people can travel in and out of space, it's kind of sort of like focusing on a religion at this point in a comic book is kind of pointless. You know what I mean? Because like these people have God-like powers. You know what I mean? Like Doctor Strange, is Doctor Strange a Catholic? You know what I mean? Like he can go into these worlds where demons actually exist, but is that our quote unquote hell? You know what I mean? So it's just like focusing on religion inside of a comic book to me is pointless, especially when you've already established that there are beings that exist who, technically are, even from Loki, right? The Kang the Conqueror.
So curious. Have you ever read the Sandman comics?
I have not.
You might like that. They're supposed to be making a Netflix series out of it, but the comics are great. But go ahead.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. But you understand what I'm saying. So if we've already established like there's a guy that sits at the end of time that can control and manipulate things, like I said, once again, having a religious discussion in the comic books is just silly to me at this point. Especially after everything happened in Infinity War and Endgame, and all. It's like, we really want to talk about this right now? Like, okay, like, yeah, like, the guy had a glove that he snapped half the universe away. Like, well, how did that affect the church? Come on now. It's like, there's no point in even discussing that. But, man, I appreciate you coming out. And until next time, man, have a good day, man. We'll be back.
You too.
Yep.